What's up, everyone, and welcome to ClearTalk. So, in this video, we are going to be talking about uh, Venezuela and how this whole time, this whole narrative that the U.S. has done and the Trump administration has done is talking about when it comes to all the bombings and stuff in the Caribbean on drug quote unquote boats. That's what this whole like war is, although it's not a declared war, yet, but this whole war on Venezuela has been about this whole issue, this uh, conflict with Venezuela. It was been about drugs, trying to keep drugs out of the U.S. That's what we've heard over and over and over and over again. But it is becoming more and more apparent. And we've said I've said here from the beginning that this was not about drugs, but looks more like about, controlling resources, that is always has been when it comes to Venezuela and among other countries for that matter. But it's becoming more and more apparent that oil is, the actual reason why we are starting this conflict and attempt at a regime change in Venezuela. And we're going to talk about that. So thank you very much for joining me here. On ClearTalk. If you're new, welcome. If you'd like to check out more videos from the channel, please do so. Consider subscribing, like, share, comment, all that good stuff to get more videos in front of more people. If you'd like to check out videos from my other channels, you have JMD Drummer there, Play and Puzzling. If you like what you see there, consider subscribing to those as well. That'd be amazing. If you'd like to give any kind of support, Patreon there, $3 a month. You can support any of the channels you would like. And help grow those channels, help grow Patreon, help grow JMD Nation. And contribute however you would like to to JMD Nation. That would be very much appreciated. Any contribution or support you give is very much appreciated. And I thank you very much. And if you are returning, you're freaking amazing. Thank you. Keep coming back, and welcome back, because we love you here. So, all right. As we've talked about this before, over and over again, that we have had multiple bombings, strikes, on boats in the Caribbean. Over 21, 22, something like that, boats have been destroyed. All of them claimed to have had drugs on them of some sort. That, the crisis of our, drugs come into our country. And these boats were carrying it. And as Trump has stated multiple times now, over and over again, this saves 25,000 people every boat, which has a math issue there, very much so. And we'll talk about that. But this has been an ongoing thing, that the drugs is the issue here, even though we have reports, U.S. intelligence and everything else, that is stated over and over again that Venezuela, the drugs from Venezuela is not an issue, that very little drugs come from Venezuela. Like less than 10% of all drugs that come into the U.S. In any way, form, or fashion have ever come from Venezuela. We know the most of where the most drugs come from. Colombia is a big cocaine. That one's mostly from there. We also know, of course, the biggest hitter that everybody in what's touted as the big issue for Venezuela is, of course, the concern over fentanyl. But we also know where fentanyl comes from. China. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. That's where it comes from. And so why are we constantly pushing that Venezuela is the problem, and that we, is that where all our drugs are coming from, or that's, and that these boats have saved 25,000 people on average, right? Outside of the fact that there are around 100,000 deaths due to drugs annually. And that's at the height. Like the height is 120. And that was during the pandemic era. Now it has dropped a little bit. Matter of fact, this past year, I think it was more around the 80,000 mark. But Trump seems to, even in his own, he keeps to claim that there's over 300,000 deaths per year because he says the number is low and that it's a lie. Just like he does with every number, he doubles it to make it sound better, or in his mind, anyways. But yet, even with that math, the 25,000 per boat doesn't add up because that's like 500,000. So, and that's all drug related deaths. From all drugs coming into the country from anywhere. So that would mean that Venezuela is 100% of our drug problem. And we know that to not be the case. Matter of fact, again, like I said, we know that Venezuela is less than 10% in any way the drugs come to the U.S. So it's just all a lie. It, even to the degree you want to say, well, there's still drugs coming in. Yes, but the way that is being narrated by Trump himself, along with the rest of his administration, his cabinet members, legislators, and everything, that it's just a lie. That's all. I mean, it's flamboyant. It's extreme. It's all lies. It's overkill. For what is the real reason? What is the real reason? Well, we're going to talk about that today. I think because it's looking more and more like, if you didn't believe it before, if you didn't already think it, there are more and more suggestions that it's actually oil. After all, one of the other, what was it, just a week ago or so, we seized a boat because of drugs, and there was a concern, or that there may have potentially a boat was bringing in drugs, but it was an oil boat. They seized that boat. Didn't care to seize the other boats but they seized that one specifically, which I found very interesting, that they decided to seize the oil tanker boat, but not the others. Okay, that one's very interesting to me. So we have here, I have the other day, this is just 3 days ago, during a bill signing ceremony for sporting, like, thing from Minnesota from years ago for the U.S. And I don't know all the things about that. But once all that signing and stuff was done and everybody spoke that was up here, of course, like every public thing like this, the press gets to ask some questions. And this is a question that was brought up, was about Venezuela. Nobody can figure out who the 4%, although just a week ago or so, or if it's been for a while now, 92%, and nobody can figure out the 8%. And it's been so weird. Nobody can figure out the 8%. But now suddenly that's been cut in half to 4% because it's now 96%. It's that's just the way Trump does with numbers all the time. When a number doesn't sound good anymore because he's repeated it over and over and over again and he wants it to sound better, he just either cuts it in half or doubles it, whichever one makes him look better or sound better. Anyways, all right, let's continue. Again, he goes with the 25,000. it's interesting that he jokes like this, jokes about the fact that you can't even find fishing boats on water because fishing boats are afraid that they're going to get. And why would they? Because they're, because we've been indiscriminately attacking boats that many of which have come back to just be fishing boats because innocent people have died on them that were fishermen. And he's just openly joking about it, like, "Oh, not even fishing boats are being found on there." You're making fun of the fact that you have created such a concern, a security issue that in the Caribbean that you have basically ruined or at the very least shrunk fishing industries from all of these different areas. I mean, this is the effect that you're going to make on these areas economically because of the fishing industries being affected because you keep blowing up fishing boats. Like, this is, it's just, I just find that ridiculous. I find that quite frankly appalling. Another lie. We still have people coming through the border. I just talked about this the other day in a video. Go check it out. We still literally have thousands of people still coming over the border. Some of which we are losing and don't know where they are. Now, is it at the levels that they were? No, of course not. There's strict, rules and strict actions being taken, and that has caused many people to not want to come here. True enough, but there is still some coming. It's he while him and his administration pretends like nobody is coming over the borders. That's just a lie. And if you're saying, well, no, they're coming through the legal way, they're coming through the legal way. No, they're still coming in illegally too. They just are. There's plenty of sites and data to show and prove it. Again, I talked about this the other day. So anyway, lies. Continue. He states again, 300,000 there. That's his number for how many people die in the U.S. a year from drugs. Even though that's not what our data shows. But okay. And he talk. I need to skip through this. And this part was interesting. In this X section, they were talking about the reporter asked about Ilhan Omar and the stuff going on in Minnesota. Since these people are from Minnesota, I think that was kind of the idea here. And he goes on his little spew about, because the question was, of course, Ilhan Omar, the whole marrying her brother thing. And if that's, really true, should she be, removed from America, blah, 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 blah. Which he goes on, well, we might need to look into that, or blah blah blah, and he's, because it's a problem. He makes a little joke with this guy here about, he doesn't want to talk about it, and that's he probably shouldn't because he doesn't want, it would look bad probably on him to talk about it, so he's going to talk for him, it's like this whole weird thing, and this guy back here seems very confused by it, and he starts questioning. He even says something like, at one point attempts to make a direct question to Trump, but Trump doesn't hear it or ignores it, and he seems very confused about what was being said. Like, what is he talking about? Anyways, but yeah. See here, he states, you keep hearing 100, you keep hearing it's not 100, it's not the real number. So he knows, he's been told, he's heard that the actual number is around 100,000 annually on average. He knows, but yet he says, no, that's not the number. That doesn't sound good enough for me. It's got to be 300,000. Just like there's 25,000 per boat. Again, even if it was 300,000, you're stating 25,000 per boat. There's been over 20 boats attacked in the Caribbean. If each one of them, that is 500,000 people saved. But 100%, which would be like 500%, which he likes to say everything's over 100% as it is. That would be like 500% of the death relates to drug related deaths. I'll get it right. Are coming from Venezuela. The numbers, just math is not mathing. The math is not mathing. So it's the 25 is wrong. The 300 is wrong. He just lies, and he says these things because he is expecting that his base, his 25 to 30% of people who just blindly follow him are going to believe every word he says, because he tells them, you can only believe me. This is fake news. Everybody else that says anything in any of these other outlets, even if they do, like 90% of the time, are on my side. If any time that they say anything that that goes against what I say, they are lying. They are fake. I am the truth teller. I've created even this social media thing called Truth, because that's and what I speak there is truth. This is what he has created, and his base, his vehement followers and supporters do not believe anything that does not come from his mouth. So when he speaks it, he expects that they're going to believe it. So he says whatever the fuck he wants, and it's a way of getting them riled up and keeping them riled up. It's just what he does. So yes, we have that. So that's what's going on. But what we had, I have here is a really good news reporting from Sky News, which is based in Australia, talking about the real reason Venezuela matters and about oil. And it does a really good breakdown so that you understand how the oil industry works, the types of oil that are refined and produced, and how that reflects the industry. And yes, we are the biggest oil industry in the world as far as like drilling and creating production. But why is Venezuela would be an oil interest for us? And it breaks it all down. So I want to just 7 minutes long. So let's check this out. A lot of which is due to sanctions and stuff that have been placed on Venezuela, and the fact that they can't really even sell a lot of their oil. And that is and the the economic strife that has been placed on Venezuela, making it hard for them to even produce. That's a lot of that, and there's probably several other factors as well. But yeah. Interesting, huh? And I find this interesting. I find this very interesting. You see here, it says, who has the most oil in the ground, reserves by country. Okay. Our production has went up tremendously. This is billions of barrels of oil in the ground that have not been pulled. The U.S. is relatively low here. So we actually, and while there's always the product, like the ground would wind up continuously to produce oil. We are peaking at our limit. Like as a matter of fact, at some point we might be over producing oil from the United States to the point that I could see before long we're going to have a downturn on that because there won't be oil. We'll be like digging out all our reserves. And so so that's interesting to me. But yes, the crude oil here in Venezuela is the most that is untouched, the most untouched in the world. Big, and this is the dark, more heavier oil, which is the majority of our refineries in the United States. That is what because our refineries are old, and the original oil, a lot of the original oil production from from early on was the thick, heavy crude oil. But now we are the United States. What we mostly produce, like he said, is the light oil, the light crude oil, which our refineries, most of our refineries, do not process. Yes, we do have some, but most of our refineries process mostly the thick, heavy stuff and the medium stuff. So that's the reason why we wind up exporting the majority of the oil produced here in America. On top of the fact that oil companies can make more money that way too, because people will pay more for the oil being exported, and then we import oil that we can at cheaper levels, the crude oil, the thicker stuff, the thicker oil, so, because our refineries can refine those. That's what they're built mostly for, refining. And then we can turn that into the different types of fuels and stuff that we're needing. And gas is always the big thing that most people picture, but there's a lot of products that is produced with crude oil, more than just gas. A lot of plastics and things like that. There's all kinds of and the crude oil, the thicker oil, it actually helps produce more of that stuff than even gas. Which our economy is heavy in products that are produced by the thicker crude oil. That's another reason why we have mostly refineries here in the United States that process that thicker oil for our economy and our industry. So this is interesting. And this is exactly, this is great reporting, in my opinion. A great breakdown. And I think the people in the United States, a lot of people in the that just don't understand the nuances around oil production, and they just think, okay, yeah, we need to drill, baby, drill, baby, drill, because the more oil we produce, it's in this, like, our oil, we own it because it comes from our ground, and it's going to help us be able to have more gas and cheaper gas and blah blah blah. But that's not how that works, and I've been trying to say that over and over and over again for a long time now, is that this is not how it works. Yes, we are and that started under Biden when we became the largest producer of oil. Like that's we've been doing it for the past decade, but Biden's administration enhanced it even more than what it was previously, and we became the largest under Biden's administration. We are the biggest producer of oil, but crude oil, but we are producing the majority of what we produce is the light crude oil, which is easier and cheaper, ironically, easier and cheaper to process into fuel, especially fuel gasoline for our vehicles, yet we export most of that. It is cheaper to refine, but the issue is that building refineries to do that refining process is very expensive to build them. And while we have built more newer refineries over the years, it's just not in the whole geopolitical conversation for the U.S. and also to keep good relations with other oil-producing countries and companies, where we're doing this exchange, thing to keep good relations in case, something does go weird and we suddenly do lose production in the United States. We still want good relations with other producing countries so that we would still be able to import those goods. So we keep a good import relationship with other countries like Saudi Arabia, and even what we should be doing is doing that with Venezuela, but instead we've decided, well, instead of trying to give good relationships with Venezuela, we're just going to overthrow them and take their oil. It's a very empirical, like old school view of how, of thinking that, we don't want to work with them anymore. We're not trying to work with them anymore. So we are just going to take them over. We're going to upend the regime, put somebody in place that would be favorable to the U.S., and then we will then just, be able to produce all the fucking oil we want to, all the heavy crude oil that we want to, that our refineries are more equipped to process. And it has the biggest, biggest reserve in the ground in the world. And that would truly set us up, because I think that is in part because they know that we are on the edge of basically sucking the U.S. dry. I think we have grown our production so heavily that I think we are actually questionably on the edge of getting all the oil that we have out of the ground. And the process in which, the earth in our ground produces that oil, I think we are sucking more than it can produce. And so ultimately, yes, we are the largest because of political reasons and the fact of having people think that that's what's, going to lower prices, and the drill baby drill era we've had here the past decade or more has created us and made us the biggest oil producers in the world. But I think that is on the verge of probably forcibly going to be slimmed, due to the fact that we are overproducing what our ground can handle. And I think that's something that has been that a lot of other areas, a lot of other places have understood, like Saudi Arabia and even probably Venezuela, understanding the not to overproduce the land. And that's the way they control their oil and the stability of their production, their oil production. But the U.S. and our means of just doing the most, doing the biggest, doing more, we're not regulating that properly. And I think that that's the issue. I think that we are overproducing and they know it, and that ultimately at some point that's going to fall apart. And so we're going to need something to fall back on. And I believe at this point that has been deemed Venezuela. Simple as that. And the Venezuelan government, because of our, constant aggression towards them, sanctions and, holding their economy back and everything else that we've put on them and done to them, they are not willing to work with the U.S. They just aren't. And rightfully so. Regardless of what you might think of the people in power in Venezuela and how they have hurt their own country, we have hurt their country just as much, if not more, and held them back. Part of the reason why their leadership hasn't been able to do anything to help the country, because we have hurt the country through our own actions. Now, yes, they have hurt the country through their actions as well in the history of Venezuela over the years, true enough. But we have not, we've exacerbated that to the point that they are so desperate for any kind of help, really. But they're pushing back on the U.S. And so our actions of those who feel that they have the power to will and the power to say so want to just take it over. The Trump administration and those that are influencing it just want to take it over. Regime change, put somebody in place, just like we've done in other countries, and take their resources. And so I think that's where we stand. And I think it's pretty clear at this point. So, enough with the drug argument. The bombing of boats was just a waste. It was killing innocent people, just as a means to create a narrative to get the American people, or the right kind of American people, on the side of the government, to basically start a war with Venezuela, a regime change with Venezuela, and it be accepted. Because generally speaking, war is just not necessarily accepted by the majority of Americans, like in any way, really. But when you make a creative narrative around, but drugs and our children dying and it's from here, and we need to take care of it because they don't care. They're flooding our streets with gangs and prisons, criminals and drugs, and it's this whole, just quite frankly, lazy narrative that they have created, as a cover for the real reason, just to get the American people to, or they think get the American people on the side of, well, it's moral to start a war because we're saving our own people, a freedom fighter kind of thing, because of our own freedoms and our own safety and security. So, anyways, let me know what you think, though. And thank you very much for joining me. Until next time, peace, clear talk with love. I'm out.